Welcome to the PRMA Consulting webinar on the PRMA HealthCheck, benchmarking your evidence against payer requirements. My name is David Sykes and I'm joined by my colleague Steve Fountain. Our webinar today introduces the PRMA HealthCheck, an interactive web-based strategic planning and management tool designed to evaluate the existing and planned evidence for your product against payer requirements on a country-by-country basis. The PRMA HealthCheck uses the actual submission templates and associated methodological guidance to guide your product development strategy. Steve will take us through the development and approach in more detail in a few minutes. Questions can be asked during the dash panel on the right-hand side of the screen. We will aim to answer all questions during the Q&A session, and if we run out of time, we respond by email after the webinar. Any questions that are asked will only be seen by the PRMA team. So a number of the team at PRMA have worked in industry in global, regional and affiliate roles. So recognizing a number of external and internal challenges, we set out 3 years ago to address these challenges in order to bring global thinking closer to affiliate needs. The external challenges highlighted in this slide relate to the complexity and evolving nature of payer requirements, how they differ on a country-by-country basis and are becoming more complex. And the landscape, as we all appreciate, is getting even tougher. Some of the internal industry challenges relate to issues identified in terms of coordinating and aligning evidence generation work streams, assessing and identifying key risks and vulnerabilities in order to inform investment decisions, retaining an institutional memory of key decisions taken across various milestones in a product development lifecycle, and effectively communicating across functions and ensuring a cross-functional alignment in terms of the access and evidence generation strategy, as well as making sure global and regional groups are obtaining timely and effective feedback and input from affiliates. So ultimately, as we go through this presentation, we will identify some of these internal and external challenges as we go through the presentation and also highlight where the health check addresses these challenges. And ultimately, the health check was designed to reduce business risk and to be able to effectively manage complexity. I'm now going to hand over to Steve, who will take us through a bit more detail about the health check. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, David. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the PRMA HealthCheck, including how we've developed the tool and how it can be used. The PRMA HealthCheck is a web-based application that can be used to evaluate the evidence being developed for a product in a particular indication against payer evidence requirements. To do this, we've systematically identified HTA, pricing reimbursement, submission templates and methodological guidelines and extracted the actual questions posed in each and categorized them into a common framework. I'll go into a little bit more detail about how the tool is developed in the next slide. It essentially allows us to map both the ongoing and planned evidence being developed for a product against the individual payer evidence requirements in each country to identify gaps and key vulnerabilities at both the country and global level. Once those gaps have been identified, recommendations and strategies can be developed in order to fill those evidence gaps and mitigate the vulnerabilities in order to optimize market access and price and reimbursement. The HealthCheck tool has evidence generation, planning and management functionality and allows you to monitor and track evidence requirements and gaps over time as additional evidence for your product is developed. So how has the PRMA HealthCheck tool been developed? We've identified publicly available submission templates and methodological guidelines from HTA, price and reimbursement agencies in each country, We have the templates and guidelines independently translated to ensure the context and meaning of each requirement is maintained. And from a review of the peer requirements, a common framework has been developed that the individual requirements from each agency can be mapped to. And I'll come on to what that framework looks like in a couple of slides. We then work closely with an independent software development agency to develop a web-based application that could house the peer requirements and be able to conduct gap analyses and evidence generation planning and enable monitoring of progress over time. There are currently 15 agencies covering 11 different markets that peer evidence requirements have been extracted for and that have been incorporated into the PRMA HealthCheck application. We plan to add additional countries or agencies in the near future and are happy to add agencies at the request of clients. Our in-house team of country-specific experts and network of external advisors keep us up to date on the likely future changes and updates to submission templates or guidelines to ensure the PRMA HealthCheck is always up to date. The application is able to provide updates or alerts as peer evidence requirements change over time. So this diagram shows the common framework and hierarchical structure that has been used to develop and map individual requirements from the submission templates in order to provide a consistent yet comprehensive approach to peer evidence gap analysis. Really, the starting point for the development of the framework is a review of over 700 individual peer evidence requirements, which were extracted from the submission templates, and which were then aggregated into 61 subdomains and 15 domains, which you can see in the center of your screen. And those cover 4 broad categories shown on the left-hand side of the screen, which are generally consistent with the format of HTA price and reimbursement submission templates globally. This allows gap analysis to be undertaken at several different levels depending on the timing of the evaluation in relation to the clinical development plan and the depth of analysis required and the internal need. And I'll come back to the different time points at which the evaluation can be conducted later. I just wanted to show you some of the subdomains so you can see the types of evidence required at a more granular level. For example, we know how important accurate determination of the eligible patient population is in France and Germany, not just according to the target patient population in the regulatory label, but also taking into account subgroups to account for differences in the final reimbursed indication being sought. And these feed into the pricing volume negotiations for the product. So it's really vital to consider what the subgroup strategy is and the different scenarios for what the final reimbursed target patient population is likely to be, and base any estimates and projections on the epidemiological data in each country. For comparative effectiveness payer archetypes, there is the need to accurately map the treatment pathway on a country-by-country basis and define the exact positioning of the product in that treatment pathway in order to determine the appropriate comparator and the product that it will be compared to. In terms of defining the comparative clinical benefit, we know the need for efficacy data for the trial population, but also for subpopulations, safety data, and the increasing importance of PRO data to further define and differentiate the value of the product from a patient perspective, but also potentially how the clinical evidence can be indirectly compared with comparators outside of the clinical trial, including evaluating the methodology used and how acceptable that is likely to be on a country-by-country basis, i.e. how will the ITC be accepted in the UK versus France versus Germany. Finally, in terms of the economic evaluation, for payer archetypes that require the cost effectiveness of the product to be determined, there are important considerations about the methodology used, structure of the model, and the justification of that, but also how the results from the clinical trial can be translated for use in the economic model. So looking at how we can direct the peer relevant, predict the peer relevant benefit based on surrogate endpoints, how to extrapolate the clinical data beyond the clinical trial period, and also consider how utility data can be captured or generated for inclusion in the model. Okay, so I'll now take you when and how the PRMA HealthCheck can be used. So initial gap analysis, as I mentioned earlier, using the PRMA HealthCheck can be conducted at various different time points during the clinical development of a product. It can either be conducted earlier on to develop the market access strategy and the evidence generation plan, and also potentially to inform phase 3 clinical trial design. At this stage, assessment of the evidence can be done at a higher level, either at the domain or subdomain level rather than the individual requirement level. Or the gap analysis could be conducted later after the development of the market access and evidence generation plan and evidence generation work streams are underway in order to validate the evidence generation plan. And at this stage, assessment would tend to be done at the subdomain or individual requirement level. A health check can also be conducted prior to regulatory submission as a final check and also to inform affiliates as to the work streams that Global have conducted and inform them of any remaining gaps that need to be considered at a country level. We can partner with you to do the initial population, rating of the evidence, provide recommendations and consult on the evidence generation strategy, although the amount of involvement can vary depending on your needs and resources internally. But typically our involvement includes reviewing the burden of disease and treatment landscape, which gives us the context for the assessment, reviewing the evidence being developed for your product and any planned evidence generation work streams, conducting the actual mapping and rating of the evidence according to the individual payer requirements. We generally do this for one agency first and discuss and align on the ratings prior to completing the analysis for the other agencies. Also develop the strategies and recommendations for evidence generation and developing the evidence generation plan. This generally includes a client workshop to present the evidence gaps, the vulnerabilities, recommendations, and discuss how the proposed evidence generation plan. Additional steps include internal validation of the evidence gaps and recommendations with affiliates in each country to get early input on the evidence gaps and strategies proposed, or external validation with peers in each scope country to ensure the ratings, evidence gaps, and evidence generation strategies are appropriate and able to satisfy peer needs. We provide you with access to the PRMA HealthCheck, which can be kept up to date internally on a continuous or periodic basis. We can also help with updates on an event-driven basis, i.e. key time points such as phase 3 clinical trial design, interim data cuts, or just prior to regulatory filing. As part of the delivery, you get 1 year of access to the PRMA HealthCheck, and subscriptions can be renewed on a yearly basis. Also ongoing technical support, training on how to use the tool, and ongoing support from the senior members of the PRMA consulting team for strategic advice and input. I'll now hand back over to David to summarise prior to taking any questions.
Thanks, Steve. I'm just going to set out now to take us through a couple of slides, and here we've presented the challenges that we identified at the beginning of the presentation, and I'd like to walk through where we believe the solutions lie in terms of some of these challenges. So we're all aware the big challenge for many access and HUR groups and pharma and biotech companies is the complexity and difference in payer requirements on a country-by-country basis. And the PRMA HealthCheck captures these exact requirements both in terms of the submission template and associated methodological guidance to help everybody set a level playing field of knowledge and understanding. And as Steve's explained, we start at the requirement level, so the actual questions asked in the submission, and we've pulled that together and categorized that and tried to clarify and simplify that into a common framework. We know payer needs are continuously evolving, and as Steve's explained, the PRMA HealthCheck is consistently updated by PRMA Consulting in conjunction with our network of advisors across the key markets to make sure that the templates and the methodological guidance are the most relevant and up to date. Payers' increasing level of scrutiny and challenge of evidence is a key challenge, and what the PRMA HealthCheck platform provides is a basis for evaluating your evidence proposed and existing against payer requirements, not based just on the quantity but also the quality of that evidence as well, and that helps us identify key issues, risks and vulnerabilities to which affiliate-tailored evidence generation strategies can be developed. Another challenge relates to the coordination and alignment of evidence generation work streams, and again I think it's clear that the HealthCheck enables this consistent scheduling and planning of work streams in order to develop an affiliate-focused, coherent and well-timed evidence generation plan. We've just got 3 or 4 more challenges to highlight in this slide here. The first one is relates to the identification and comparison of key risks and vulnerabilities to inform investment decisions. And the PRMA HealthCheck allows these issues and vulnerabilities to be identified in a consistent manner, so informed investment decisions and trade-offs can be reached and are actually contained within the context of the HealthCheck as well. It also allows a platform to discuss and trade off the risks of not undertaking specific evidence generation. So both a tool that can be used within specialist functions, but also more broadly within the organisation to debate the pros and cons and trade-offs of not investing in a particular piece of evidence generation. Key challenge that we've all come across is the retention of the institutional memory as to why these decisions have been taken and what was the background and context for those decisions. The HealthCheck gives a change log and an update to enable the retention of that institutional memory. So anybody who's coming into this new can just access the tool and the platform and understand why those decisions and trade-offs were made. So the organisation, independent of individuals, retains the knowledge and the reasons for those decisions. A challenge relates to the communication and understanding from multiple stakeholders of the access and HOR needs in terms of these submissions. And this HealthCheck provides a single platform driving cross-functional alignment as well. Another key aspect I think relates to the potential elimination of the duplication of effort and evidence generation. I'm sure we've all seen situations where affiliates are set off on a course where work has been duplicated. Using this as a collaborative platform eliminates that waste and that duplication. And I think perhaps the biggest challenge that we all face as market access and HOR professionals is really understanding and reducing the commercial risk related to pricing and market access. And we believe the HealthCheck offers a credible and consistent approach to understanding and proactively managing risks and opportunities from a market access perspective. And also the HealthCheck can be used as a highly effective portfolio planning tool, ensuring faster and better decision making. So hopefully we've outlined in those slides there a number of the challenges and how the HealthCheck can meet those challenges. We've got a couple of minutes left for questions, so I'm going to open up, and we've had a number from the floor, so thanks very much to the attendees for that. So the first question I'm going to ask to Steve is, how long does it take to conduct the initial population and analysis of a HealthCheck project?
So that really depends on the scope, so the number of agencies, and also the depth of analysis required, whether we're rating at the domain, subdomain or individual requirement level. However, for a typical HealthCheck, if we're conducting the analysis for the EU, Major 5 and the US, it usually takes about 12 weeks to conduct the analysis at the individual requirement level, and that includes reviewing the disease background, discussion of the evaluation of the first agency with the client, evaluation of the remaining agencies, and then developing the evidence generation plan.
Okay. Do you reference the actual decision document of those HTA decisions that are not in English? Shall I take this one?
Yep.
Yeah. So we do. We have a number of non-English speaking agencies in the platform, and as the part of the landscape assessment, we ensure that we've got translated documents of those decisions, and also we've translated and contextualized the submission templates from the original language back into English, and also validated those with payers in each of those markets. How do you take into consideration the disease indication context, e.g. hospital versus outpatients, orphan versus non-orphan?
So when we actually set up the tool with the relevant submission templates, we select those based on the likely treatment setting of the product, so whether it's hospital versus outpatients or community. For example, the TLV have different submission templates for inpatient versus outpatient drugs. Or Genesis Seth in Spain look more at hospital evaluations versus CMENM, which is more done at the autonomous regional level. In terms of orphan drugs, there are specific requirements on that included in the tool, and also requirements that actually do not need to be considered as part of the evaluation. An example of that is in Germany, as we know, there's no need for comparative effectiveness data versus the appropriate comparator. So those requirements would be rated green within the tool, i.e. satisfied.
Great, thanks Steve. We have a number of other questions, but unfortunately we've run out of time, so we will follow up individually with those people. Thanks very much for your time and attention today and your questions, and if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to drop us a note. Thank you.